on paper, I should have been better. And by this point, I was on, quote unquote, physiological replacement dose of thyroid hormone and knew I was actually to the point where I was dosing it throughout the day so as not to kind of overload the system or overload the body with too much at once and to work more with how the body works, which is, the thyroid doesn't release a huge bolus at once. It releases it over the course of the day. And what was happening is I wasn't just still symptomatic. What was so interesting is the symptoms had shifted. Definitely the chronic UTI IC stuff was long gone by this point. But what wasn't gone was the headaches, even though they were getting less frequent. What was new was actually mast cell activation. I finally realized, finally had a name to put with it, that was what was going on. And it was just a casual conversation with my husband one morning about, I feel really inflamed and raw after I eat breakfast every day. And he's like, yeah, it sounds like you're histamine. Take an allergy pill because that's the solution for everything. Take an ibuprofen, take an allergy pill, which is so cute. And that clued me in like, huh, that's what I've got going on now. I've actually got mast cell activation going on. And the other thing that was just a telltale for me was my rising body temperature. So when you check your body temperature in the first morning, like the very first thing in your mouth is a thermometer, it gives you so much information. This was how I'd track down that I had dysregulated cortisol. When you're tracking your cycle, it's how you know when you've ovulated, how you know the day before your period starts. Like, just an incredible tool and so easy and very cheap. Like it's the cost of a thermometer and keeping batteries in the thing, right? Um, and what was so interesting is even though I was on that physiological dose of thyroid replacement hormone, my body temp was still really low in the morning. And I'd actually reached this point where I was having symptoms of hypoxia. So this is low oxygen, low blood oxygen level. And how I knew that is on the morning dog walks, my heart rate would actually go into the aerobic zone. And on a basic, it's not like I was running with them. We were just going for a walk. And sometimes at the gym, and I don't do anything crazy I mean, I do weightlifting, but nothing crazy. My heart rate would actually hit the max heart rate zone. And all of that, I knew, I was like, this is not good. This is either setting me up for congestive heart failure or setting me up for like something I didn't want. And especially for someone who's never had heart problems before. So there was still something off. And ultimately, what happened was some way, somehow, I got turned back on to Morley Robbins. Now, Morley's this older guy. He's an ex-hospital employee who, after he retired, he decided to. Uh, Morley's just an interesting guy. He's one of these people that he sees what everybody else sees, and when he sees that, he asks what nobody else has asked. And this really led him to realize that so much of what we're struggling with, so much of the reason why it seems like the body really downsizes and downregulates energy production is actually because it is overloaded with iron. Now, if this is the first time you've heard about this, that might sound crazy, especially if you're anemic, right? If you're like, well, Brandy, my ferritin is 15 and I'm on a daily iron supplement because, my doc said so. Because if you were to see my CBC panel and if you were to see my red blood cell, like all of those values, you'd agree I'm anemic and I need iron. I'm not here to say you don't need iron. What I'm here to say is that what's so interesting about what Morley has discovered is that the body already has the iron it needs. It's actually stored it away in the different tissues of the body, and it can't get back into circulation because we're missing some essential minerals required to recycle iron into its usable form so that it can be put back into hemoglobin and act as a carrier for oxygen once again. And I had come across Morley like years and years ago. I even tried his protocol years and years ago on my own in standard brandy fashion, and for whatever reason had abandoned it then. But this time I decided to do it again, and I was blown away by the results to the point where I was like, I am going to develop a protocol around this and develop it in a way to help even the most reactive bodies. Because typically by the time people find me, they have already exhausted every other option. They're at their wits' end and seriously have really have no good idea where else to turn. And that's where people say, all right, fine, I'll throw in the towel and try this girl. Right? Like, might as well try brandy. I've already tried the rest. So, and I think my personal opinion is there's a reason for it. That's because that's what I did. I exhausted everything that was out there before I started listening to my own intuition. I'm like, well, when I've tried all the rest, I might as well try the best. And that has, I mean, that has been transformative. And again, my own intuition, like the divine, led me to crossing paths with Morley again at a key point when what Morley was saying actually made sense. So now that does not mean you can just rush in and start mobilizing iron straight away. There's a lot of things that have to be done before that. And here's where I'm going with this. Because by the time clients find me, this is the path they're walking. They are essentially, you should be walking the leisure lane every day of life. Like you should be able to kind of bounce off the walls, and they've got bumpers. So, it doesn't hurt too much when you bounce off the walls. And it's like a 6-lane highway where you are the only person driving that highway. Well, by the time clients often find me, they are driving a car on a tightrope. So, this car, the wheels are actually straddling that tightrope, which means they're not going very fast down the rope itself. And any kind of, you crank the radio dial too far to the right and the car's tilting this way as if to fall off this tightrope. And so this is a long-winded way of saying, before we do anything, like before we even try to mobilize this iron, we've got to build energetic capacity back into the body. We've got to build back in the body's, we've got to support the body in restoring its own ability to deal with oxidative stress, because this is one of the things when iron gets locked away into the tissues of the body, it begins to rust. And this is often why this process of rusting, so that oxidative stress, that is when the body begins downregulating energy production. It's like we have got rust going on, and anytime we generate additional reactive oxygen species, which are often the exhaust products of normal energy production, anytime we generate reactive oxygen species or other oxidants, we are fueling this process of rust building up. And we already don't have the antioxidant capacity, aka glutathione, which the body can make on its own, to deal with the oxidative stress we have going on in the tissues. So we're just going to shut down energy production. And then what this shows up as is a myriad of symptoms. This shows up as weight gain, because all of a sudden, the body's deprioritized actually digesting food, right? Oftentimes, that weight gain is actually inflammation in disguise. It looks like you're adding inches to your belly, and it's actually inflammation. So that's thing one, or water retention, which there's a different sidebar for way later in the program. Right now, I'm just describing kind of the premise, the thought process behind this program, which is Reclaim Wellness Intensive. Okay, so that's thing one. It might show up as weight gain, aka inflammation. It could show up as headaches. I mean, this is a hallmark. The brain needs energy, and the brain especially is a heavy user of glucose, which is, I mean, glucose is a preferred fuel source by the brain. So if you've got these oxidative processes going on, you start to have rust in the insulin receptors, you start to have rust in the process just of you've got downregulated energy production anyways, you start to have headaches more frequently. This shows up as hypoxia because now you don't have the oxygen carrying ability of the blood itself, because that iron is locked away in the tissues in a form where it is not usable. Iron, like many other metals, exists in two forms. And basically, one of those can carry oxygen, and one of those is oxidized rust. So this would be the equivalent of if you were to look at fresh, shiny iron, and then you were to look at rust, like the different, think of a wrought iron fence, right? That's a great example of it. And then over time, so those are two different forms of iron. The same thing is going on in the body. So again, we start to see this as, oh, I have a thyroid problem. Well, you have an energy problem. And sure, you might have high thyroid antibodies, but if we trace back the reason for that, it's really the body was looking for a way to downregulate energy production, and we didn't have enough antioxidants on board, so it started attacking that thyroid peroxidase, which is an enzyme that uses peroxide. So all of a sudden it starts to make sense when we look at the body in terms of this oxidative and redox state. Now, what we're doing in this Reclaim Wellness program, because you can't start here and go to here just overnight, and you can't start here and expect to mobilize iron, because you are going to crash, because now you've just started circulating all of this labile, which is unbound iron in the body, and in a body that already was in an oxidative, was already struggling with too much oxidative stress. And that iron being oxidative, now circulating in the bloodstream, is going to create additional oxidative stress, especially if it can't get out. So what we do inside the Reclaim Wellness program is we focus first on restoring energy to the body. And what we want to do is go from this level of energy capacity to at least this level of energy capacity. And at the same time, we focus on opening drainage pathways. And here, I'm not talking phase 1, phase 2 detox. I'm actually talking phase 3 detox or elimination pathways. So we focus on that, kind of the final step in any elimination pathway. Because also a lot of times what many of us are struggling with is we've got a sulfite problem. We're unable to convert that sulfite over into sulfate so the body can easily eliminate it. And we start to have buildup again in the brain, resulting in those headaches. So we address that in phase 1 or month 1, module 1 of the program, before moving into the mobilization phase, which is module 2. Module 2, we focus heavily on mobilization and on supporting that mobilization in a way that does not result in crashes. And then module 3, we do a bit of integration of what we've done in both module 1 and 2. This is a little bit more expanded energy capacity, while at the same time we're layering on additional supports for the body's natural ability to make antioxidants to address this oxidative stress within. And we move deeper into nervous system support. So throughout, this winds up looking like so it's a 3-month container with an additional 2 weeks at the front where we establish coherence and address interferences, and an additional 2 weeks at the back end for wrap up. So it winds up being a total of 4 weeks. And this is a beta offering. So the very first time I am offering this in a group setting. For that reason, you are getting a screaming deal. This is offered at $150 for the entire program when you opt in before May 22nd, 2026. The program officially kicks off. We have our first kickoff call. There are biweekly, speaking of which, there are biweekly calls, live calls, virtual live calls, where you're able to ask any questions, bring up anything that you're struggling with in the program, whatever. During those biweekly calls, you are also welcome to, if you know you're not going to be able to make a call live, you're also welcome to submit a question via email before that call. Or if things come up 10 minutes after we get off the call, you're able to submit that question. So $150 when you opt in by May 22nd. From May 22nd until May 29th, you're still able to get in at the price of $450. This program, once we complete this beta, the price will jump to not less than $1,500. So again, this is a screaming deal. All right. Reach out to me. The booking link is below. If you have questions, you're welcome to ask. And again, yeah, the booking link is below. So go ahead and secure your spot. I would love to see you inside the Reclaim Wellness Intensive.